The Palestinian president calls for international forces to bring calm to the Gaza Strip. Hamas warns they would be met with hostile fire. So what's the way forward? Can the two sides be united? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Lauren Taylor. With Palestinian divisions showing no sign of healing, could outside help be the answer? Since Hamas took control of Gaza in savage fighting last month, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and his Fatah contingent have rejected calls for talks. Abbas dismissed the Hamas-led unity government and now says he wants international forces to be deployed in Gaza to allow fresh elections to take place securely.
We want to preserve the unity of the Palestinian people. We know they've tried to divide the people, and we want to preserve this unity. We want to preserve the unity of the Palestinian cause by organising anticipated elections and with the presence of international forces in order to, at least, protect those elections and preserve security.
Hamas, though, and the deposed Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh said they would treat any foreign troops as an occupying force to be greeted with missiles and rockets.
The international forces are not acceptable to us. We in Gaza and in the Palestinian territories are under occupation, and we are not in need for more forces that will put more pressure on the Palestinian people, and we are able to resolve our issues away from any foreign intervention.
Well, where would any proposed international troops deploy? The force that the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has appealed for would consist of heavily armed troops and be only in the Gazan part of occupied Palestine. Well, joining us now are our guests. From Gaza, Mohamed Abu Sada, Professor of Political Sciences at Al-Azhar University. From Ramallah, Bassem Esbidi, Professor of Political Sciences at Birzeit University. And from Beirut, Timur Göksel, former Senior Advisor to UNIFIL. If I could go to you first of all, Mohamed Abu Sada, why do you think that Mr. Abbas thinks that an international force is a good idea at this point?
Well, I believe that after the Hamas takeover of the Gaza Strip 2 weeks ago, President Abbas and Fatah is desperate to bring back the situation in the Gaza Strip as it was 2 weeks ago. And the only way to do it is by asking international forces to deploy in the Gaza Strip to try to bring calm and order in Gaza. But I believe that by asking international forces without the approval of Hamas will only cause more friction and more deterioration here in the Gaza Strip, because we are in the middle of accusations between Hamas and Fatah. Everyone is accusing the other of working for other regional and international players. And basically, the only one who is suffering right now is the Palestinian people. Okay, so I believe that the call by President Abbas is not without any problems at this moment.
Bassem Esbidi, why are Hamas so against it?
Well, I think Hamas perceives this step or this move as adding fuel to the fire. Hamas has been showing some kind of intention, has been sending some messages in order to bring a sense of dialogue, a sense of rational engagement among the Palestinians to deal with the tragic events in Gaza. And what is really needed at this point is some kind of equitable approach on the part of the President Abbas, because after all, if there is an injury, the first thing people should do is to try first aid. If the first aid doesn't work, then we take the patient to the hospital. But unfortunately, at this point, what Mahmoud Abbas has decided is to basically internationalize the fight among the Palestinians. And I'm afraid this sort of internationalization of our conflict is not really going to be solved by anybody other than ourselves as Palestinians.
It's interesting, though, that Hamas suggested when the factional fighting was going on that an Arab force should be brought in to control the two sides. If that was a good idea then, why would international troops not be welcome?
Well, again, the international troops they should come to Palestine, but primarily in order to protect the Palestinians from the Israelis and not to protect the Palestinians from their own fighting, which is something good if it happens. But the focal point here, and maybe even the fighting among these factions here in Palestine, is organically linked to the fact that we do have an occupation, and the occupation is basically making it miserable for everybody, has been pressuring Abbas in order to contain Hamas, and has been targeting Hamas because Hamas basically is representing and articulating different discourse. So I think the major part of the L is really the occupation, and if anybody is going to come to Palestine to really do any good to the Palestinians, I think the question of defending the Palestinians against the Israelis should be number one task, and every other minor task will follow.
Okay, Timur Goksel, do you think it's the solution to bring in international peacekeepers?
I think actually you are going a bit too fast in this one. What we are talking about is the internal security force that the UN does not specialize in. All the comments from the Israeli officials, up to the foreign minister, they've been saying that what they want is not a peacekeeping force along the lines of UNIFIL in South Lebanon, but a force that will fight terrorism, that will collect weapons, that will guard the borders. They are looking for internal security force, and for UN, a peacekeeping force, before everything else, has to have the consent of all the parties concerned. If Amal says no, I've been hearing the Egyptians saying no, and I haven't yet heard a single Israeli saying yes. What are we talking about here? Where is that force coming from? And from my practical experience, if you are aware of any single country in the world who sent their troops into an internal security situation in Gaza as it is today, I'll be very, very surprised.
So do you think, I mean, we've had Israel, the EU, the UN saying that they would consider an international force for Gaza. Do you think they're just kind of saying they'll consider it because it's out there and it's up for discussion, but actually it's not a reality they would ever really practically get involved in?
I mean, very recently, the Israeli foreign minister, when she was meeting with the EU ambassadors in Israel, she told them that what she wants is an anti-terror force with executive powers, whatever that means, which we can guess. So, I mean, first of all, as I said, Hamas or anybody else in Palestine will not accept that. Certainly, the UN might not go along with it. Even if UN goes along with it, you are not going to find any volunteers for such a force. The EU example at Rafah Gate is not a very happy experience for the European countries. So I think everybody is paying lip service, but I don't think anybody is really serious about this.
What's your view on what we've just heard, a fairly negative perception of the idea?
Well, from what we have been hearing here in the Gaza Strip with the Hamas flat rejections for any international force to be deployed in the Gaza Strip, basically I agree that I don't think any country will send its troops or will send its forces to the Gaza Strip, because the case which we are talking about right now is that the Palestinian people and the PLO have asked the international community to send international forces to the Palestinian occupied territories for the past 20 years, to separate between the Palestinian and Israelis, to put an end to the Israeli occupation. But we are facing a different, basically a different thing here, that what we are seeing is that President Mahmoud Abbas is calling for international force to be deployed in the Gaza Strip after the Hamas takeover and after as I mentioned, the flat rejection by Hamas for any such force to be deployed in the Gaza Strip. That will leave this force to be hunted by Palestinian militias and Palestinian resistance groups. What I think is that any such force, if it's going to be deployed in the Gaza Strip, it should be deployed after consensus and after agreement between Fatah and Hamas, basically, and all Palestinian factions and groups. So this force will not be hunted and targeted by Palestinian resistance groups and militia here in the Gaza Strip.
Bassem Izbidi, also regionally, would it be something that could be acceptable? I mean, for instance, the Egyptians would not be, I understand, particularly keen on the idea. Do you think regionally it could actually cause more trouble than it was worth?
Yes, I do believe so. I think I'm not aware of any Arab party that is really encouraged to get into this kind of very poorly calculated step. After all, the sending troops is going to be the first step, but the question remains: what's next? These troops are not going to be welcomed in Gaza. They will be engaged violently with Hamas fighters. They will escalate further the tension between Hamas and Fatah. They will deepen the rift between the West Bank and Gaza. And I do not really see any Arab country is really interested to see this kind of dramatic escalation of the situation in the ground to reach that level. I'm aware of all sorts of good intentions and probably initiatives on the part of many Arab countries, particularly the Egyptians and the Saudis, to bring together the Palestinian fighting groups and then to devise, let's say, Mecca II kind of accord, where both come this time with genuine political will to deal with their differences peacefully and to really tackle all these big issues that they ignored in the first accord.
OK, gentlemen, stay where you are. We're taking a short break now. When we come back, we'll be discussing the role played by international forces already in the Middle East. They've been there for the last 3 decades. Do stay with us.